The galaxy had many empires, but the Xarvok Empire believed it was the strongest of them all. Their ships were large, their weapons were advanced, their soldiers were trained from birth. For centuries, no one had dared to challenge them. Then they found Earth. At first, humans did not look impressive. Their planet was divided into many nations. Their technology was still growing. They argued with each other. They competed with each other. From the outside, they looked weak. The Xarvok High Council studied them for months. They watched human news. They listened to human broadcasts. They scanned their defenses. The final report was simple. Humans are emotional. They are divided. They will not survive a direct strike. The decision was easy. They would not attack Earth itself. That would bring too much attention. Instead, they would strike a small human colony on the edge of known space. A mining world, small population, limited defense. Just a warning, just to show power. The colony was called Haven 12. It had fewer than 50,000 people, workers, engineers, families. It was quiet and peaceful. The sky above it was usually clear, until the Xarvok fleet arrived. The human radar stations detected the fleet too late. Massive warships appeared from hyperspace like dark shadows. Within minutes, energy cannons fired from orbit. Defense satellites exploded. Communication towers were destroyed. The colony had small defense ships, but they were no match. Human pilots launched anyway. They knew they would lose, but they flew. Within 1 hour, Haven 12 was burning. The Xarvok commander watched from his flagship. He felt satisfied. But the humans fought harder than expected, but it did not matter. Power always wins. "Send the message," he ordered. A simple transmission was broadcast toward Earth. "Submit to the Xarvok Empire. This was only a demonstration." Then the fleet left. The Xarvok celebrated their clean victory. No major damage, no losses worth mentioning. The High Council approved. Humans would now understand their place. But something strange happened. Earth did not respond with anger. There was no emotional speech from human leaders, no threats, no desperate plea for peace. Instead, Earth went quiet. All long-range communication from human space reduced to minimum levels. Military channels encrypted, civilian traffic rerouted, trade ships recalled. Silence. The Xarvok intelligence officers reported it as fear. They are in shock," one analyst said. "They are preparing to surrender." The High Council agreed. 3 days passed. On the 4th day, a Xarvok patrol fleet near the Outer Rim stopped responding. 5 ships, gone. No distress call, no debris field, no energy surge detected. It was as if they had never existed. The Xarvok commander dismissed it at first. "Mechanical failure," he said. "Navigation error." But then another report came. A listening post near human territory went offline. The station had heavy shields. It had defense drones. Gone. Still no explosion. Still no signal. Now the High Council felt something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. They sent a larger fleet to investigate the missing patrol ships. 20 warships entered the region near Haven 12. Their sensors scanned everything. They found nothing. No wreckage, no mines, no radiation, just empty space. Then, one by one, the ships lost contact. First the outer scout ship, then 2 destroyers, then the flagship. Each ship disappeared without a trace. No warning, no visible attack, only silence. Back on the Xarvok homeworld, alarms filled the command chamber. Officers shouted. Screens flickered with lost signals. The High Commander stood still, staring at the map. "How?" he asked quietly. No one had an answer. Meanwhile, on Earth, deep underground, human leaders met in a secure chamber. They did not shout. They did not panic. A large screen displayed footage from Haven 12, burning cities, fallen pilots, families running for shelter. The room was silent. Then a human general spoke. "They think this was a warning." Another leader replied, calm and steady. So then we will give them one. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They knew that. Their ships were smaller. Their weapons were not the most advanced. But humans had something else. They adapted. From the moment Haven 12 was attacked, human scientists began studying Xarvok energy signatures. Human engineers examined fragments of destroyed enemy drones. Hackers analyzed intercepted signals. In 3 days, humans learned more about Xarvok systems than the aliens expected in 3 years. And humans had another advantage. They were used to war. They had fought each other for thousands of years. They understood strategy. They understood sacrifice. They understood survival. The Xarvok believed they had scared humanity. They had done the opposite. On the edge of human space, a small human fleet moved quietly through the darkness. Their ships ran cold, no bright engines, no loud signals. They were not looking for glory. They were looking for weakness. Back in the Xarvok command chamber, the High Commander finally broke the silence. What exactly did we wake up? No one answered. Because for the first time in centuries, the Xarvok Empire felt something dangerous. Fear. And far away, in the quiet black of space, human ships continued moving forward. Not loudly, not proudly, but with purpose. The Xarvok had sent a warning. Humans were preparing a response. And this time, there would be no demonstration. The Xarvok Empire had faced rebellion before. They had crushed smaller species that tried to resist. They had destroyed fleets twice the size of the human navy. But this was different. This time, the enemy was not fighting in open battle. The enemy was learning. And that made the High Council uneasy. In the central war chamber of the Xarvok capital, massive holographic maps displayed human territory in cold blue light. Red markers showed every Xarvok ship that had vanished. The number was growing. No explosions, no distress calls, just absence. The silence from human space was now more terrifying than any threat could have been. The High Commander demanded answers from his intelligence division. Scouts were sent deeper toward human borders, this time equipped with stronger shields and layered sensors. They scanned for hidden mines, cloaked ships, radiation signatures, gravitational traps, anything that could explain the disappearances. But the scans returned nothing unusual. Human space looked almost peaceful. The trade routes had resumed. Civilian traffic moved slowly. From the outside, it looked like a wounded species trying to recover. But that image did not match the reality the Xarvok were experiencing. What the Xarvok could not see was what humans were doing beneath the surface. Deep underground facilities on Earth were active day and night. Engineers worked without sleep, analyzing captured Xarvok weapon fragments recovered from Haven 12. Human scientists broke down energy patterns and shield frequencies. They discovered something important. Xarvok's shields were strong against direct impact, but weaker against fluctuating frequency bursts. It was a small weakness, but humans did not need a large one. They only needed an opening. Human cyber warfare teams were also busy. During the attack on Haven 12, they had secretly recorded Xarvok communication pulses. Within 72 hours, human codebreakers found patterns in the alien language. It was not perfect translation, but it was enough to understand fleet coordination signals. Humans now knew how Xarvok ships talked to each other in battle. That knowledge was dangerous. Unlike the Xarvok, humans did not rush into revenge. They did not send a massive fleet toward alien space. Instead, they responded quietly. Small strike groups moved through dark regions of space, staying outside standard sensor range. These ships were not designed for power. They were designed for stealth and precision. Human crews understood something the Xarvok did not. War was not about pride, it was about survival. The first confirmed human counter-operation took place near a Xarvok supply route. A transport convoy carrying fuel and ammunition suddenly lost navigation control. At first, the Xarvok believed it was a system failure. Then their escort ships began receiving false targeting data. Their own defensive turrets misidentified friendly ships as enemies. Confusion spread through the fleet in seconds. Before they could correct the error, human strike ships appeared from behind a nearby asteroid field. They did not stay long. They disabled engines, destroyed supply containers, and vanished again. The entire operation lasted less than 4 minutes. The High Council was shocked. Humans were not fighting like prey. They were dismantling the Empire piece by piece. Every lost patrol, every destroyed convoy weakened Xarvok expansion lines. And still, Earth made no official declaration of war, no public speeches, no dramatic threats. And the calmness of humanity began to feel intentional. On Earth, military leaders reviewed each successful operation with careful analysis. They studied every second of recorded battle footage. Mistakes were noted. Improvements were suggested. Human commanders encouraged flexibility. If one tactic worked, they adjusted it and tested new variations. Humans were evolving in real time. Every encounter made them sharper. Meanwhile, panic slowly spread among Xarvok officers stationed near human borders. Patrol crews reported seeing shadows on long-range sensors that disappeared before confirmation. Some claimed to detect faint engine signatures trailing them for hours. Others swore that their communication systems glitched only when near human territory. Fear does not need proof. It only needs uncertainty. And uncertainty was now everywhere. And the High Commander finally addressed the Council with visible frustration. He admitted that humans were not reacting emotionally as predicted. They were calculating. They were patient. This realization forced a change in Xarvok's strategy. The Empire decided to deploy a larger fleet directly toward Earth's outer defense ring. The goal was clear: overwhelming force. Crush human military infrastructure in one decisive strike before they adapted further. But even that decision revealed something important. For the first time, the Xarvok Empire was responding instead of commanding. They were adjusting because of humans. The balance of control was shifting. As the massive Xarvok war fleet prepared to move, human deep space sensors detected the buildup. Analysts on Earth studied the incoming formations. The alien ships were arranged in traditional assault formation, powerful, direct, confident. Human generals did not look worried. Instead, they looked focused. One officer quietly explained that this was expected. Humans had anticipated escalation. They had prepared for it since the moment Haven 12 burned. Far from Earth, hidden in cold space, a new class of human vessel waited. These ships were different from anything previously deployed. They carried adaptive frequency cannons designed specifically to exploit Xarvok shield weaknesses. Their hulls were layered with signal-dampening materials. They were not beautiful. They were not large. But they were efficient. As the Xarvok fleet advanced, confident in their superiority, they did not realize that they were entering a battlefield humans had already shaped. The communication satellites had been repositioned. Decoy drones drifted silently through space. Hidden relay stations amplified false signals. The environment itself was becoming a weapon. Back in the Xarvok command chamber, the High Commander watched the fleet move forward and spoke with certainty. "This will end their resistance," he declared. But deep inside, even he felt doubt. Too many ships had vanished. Too many operations had failed without explanation. In the darkness between stars, human ships adjusted their trajectories. They did not rush. They did not celebrate early success. They simply prepared. Because humans do not react in panic. They respond with precision. And this time their response was only beginning. The Xarvok assault fleet moved toward human space with full confidence. But confidence is dangerous when it is built on old information. Their ships were arranged in a classic domination formation, heavy cruisers in the center, destroyers guarding the flanks, and long-range artillery ships positioned behind layered shield carriers. It was the same formation that had crushed dozens of civilizations before. It was powerful, direct, and designed to overwhelm. The High Commander believed that once the humans saw such force approaching their core systems, they would finally panic. Instead, the humans adjusted their calculations. Human deep space monitoring stations tracked every movement of the Xarvok fleet. Nothing about it was random. Human analysts studied formation spacing, shield rotation cycles, weapon charge intervals, and even minor variations in engine heat signatures. And they were not looking for weaknesses in strength. They were looking for patterns. Humans understood something the Xarvok did not fully respect. Every system, no matter how advanced, follows rules, and rules can be studied. As the alien fleet crossed into the outer defensive region of human territory, the first unexpected event occurred. Xarvok sensor arrays began detecting multiple human fleet signatures ahead. The readings suggested a large defensive force waiting directly in their path. The High Commander smiled when he saw the numbers. "They gathered to die," he said confidently. But when the fleet advanced closer, the signatures flickered and split. The numbers changed rapidly, doubling and then tripling. Some readings showed enormous warships that humans did not officially possess. Then others showed dozens of smaller crafts surrounding the main fleet. The Xarvok tactical officers struggled to lock accurate targets. Their sensors were being manipulated. Humans had deployed signal distortion arrays across nearby asteroid belts. False fleet projections bounced through space, creating illusions of strength. While the alien fleet slowed to reorganize targeting protocols, human stealth squadrons were already in position behind them. The first strike did not come from the front. It came from the rear. Human adaptive frequency cannons fired in synchronized bursts at the shield generators of the outermost destroyers. The shots were not aimed to destroy immediately. They were tuned to destabilize shield harmonics. Xarvok shields flared brightly, then flickered. For a brief moment, the protective layer weakened just enough. That was when the second wave hit. Precision torpedoes pierced exposed hull sections, targeting engines and command relays rather than central reactors. Humans were not trying to create explosions that would warn the fleet. They were removing function. Within minutes, 3 Xarvok destroyers lost propulsion and drifted out of formation. Panic began spreading across communication channels as officers reported rear attacks from invisible ships. The High Commander ordered immediate rotation of the fleet, but as they turned, the projected human fleet in front vanished completely. It had never been there. The realization came too late. Humans attacked again, this time targeting supply ships embedded within the main formation. Cargo vessels carrying ammunition and fuel were disabled with careful shots. Explosions were avoided, so humans wanted resources intact if possible. Boarding pods launched silently toward crippled ships. Elite human marines entered alien vessels not with rage, but with discipline. They moved quickly through corridors, neutralizing resistance with calm precision. Xarvok soldiers were physically stronger, but they were not prepared for close-quarters combat that shifted so unpredictably. Humans adapted mid-fight, using environment, gravity controls, and even damaged equipment as tools. One captured Xarvok officer later reported something chilling to his superiors before communications were cut. He said the humans did not shout during battle. They communicated in short, clear phrases. They did not celebrate victories or curse losses. They adjusted. Every move felt calculated. It was as if they had already imagined this exact fight many times before it happened. The High Commander tried to regain control by ordering full power to forward cannons and firing into surrounding space to flush out hidden attackers. Massive energy beams cut through asteroids and debris fields, lighting space in violent flashes. For a moment, it seemed like the humans had retreated, but retreat was part of their design. Human ships reappeared at new angles, attacking exposed flanks as the alien formation stretched thin. Every defensive move the Xarvok made created another weakness somewhere else. Humans were not stronger in open battle, but they were more flexible. Meanwhile, on Earth, command leaders monitored the fight in real time. They did not cheer as alien ships fell out of formation. Instead, they studied reaction speeds. They measured how long it took the Xarvok to reorganize after disruption. Data was more important than victory. Each second of battle was information, and information was power. As the engagement continued, something unexpected happened inside the Xarvok fleet. Internal communication lines began experiencing delays. Human cyber units had managed to insert disruptive code into captured relay systems during earlier skirmishes. The malware did not shut systems down completely. It introduced hesitation. Targeting data arrived a fraction of a second late. Shield synchronization lagged. In space combat, fractions of seconds determine survival. The High Commander finally understood the truth. Humans were not trying to win quickly. They were studying the Xarvok in active combat. They were turning every clash into research. And the longer the battle lasted, the more dangerous humanity became. Desperation crept into the alien command voice as retreat was considered for the first time. Xarvok doctrine did not favor withdrawal, but continuing the engagement risked total collapse of the fleet. Before the final order could be given, a new human vessel appeared on long-range sensors. It was larger than previous ships, but not massive. It moved calmly into firing range and activated a focused adaptive cannon aimed directly at the flagship's shield core. The shot did not destroy the flagship, but it disrupted its command field, forcing secondary systems to take control. For several seconds, the Xarvok flagship drifted without centralized command authority. In those seconds, the illusion of superiority shattered. Humans did not chase fleeing ships as aggressively as expected. Instead, they allowed portions of the fleet to retreat, tracking their escape vectors quietly. They wanted the survivors to carry something back home, not just damage, but knowledge. The knowledge that humanity was not prey. As the damaged Xarvok fleet withdrew toward safer space, silence filled their command chambers once more. But this silence was different from before. It was no longer confusion. It was realization. The thing about humans was not their strength. It was not their numbers. It was not even their technology. It was their ability to learn faster than fear could spread. And now the Xarvok Empire finally understood that they had not started a simple war. They had awakened an opponent that grew stronger every time it was tested. The damaged Xarvok fleet returned to Imperial space carrying more than physical scars. Their hulls were burned, their systems strained, but the deeper damage was psychological. For the first time in recorded history, a lesser species had not only survived direct confrontation with the Xarvok Empire, but had controlled the flow of battle. The High Commander stood before the High Council once again, but this time his voice carried less certainty. He explained how humans had manipulated sensor readings, exploited shield harmonics, and disrupted communication chains with precision timing. He admitted that humanity was not fighting for pride or revenge. They were fighting to dismantle. The Council reacted with anger. Pride blinded them where caution should have grown. They refused to accept that humans were shaping the war. In their view, the solution was obvious: escalate. They authorized full mobilization of the Second Dominion fleet, a force larger than the previous assault group. This fleet was not built for testing an opponent. It was built for crushing them completely. The goal was no longer intimidation. The goal was demonstration of absolute power. While the Xarvok prepared for overwhelming retaliation, humans did something unexpected. They did not gather their fleets defensively around Earth. Instead, they expanded operations outward. Human strike teams targeted remote Xarvok shipyards and communication hubs located far from the front lines. These were not large attacks designed for spectacle. They were quiet, calculated operations aimed at production capability. Supply depots malfunctioned. Docking stations lost internal gravity control. The construction platform suffered mysterious power failures that delayed ship deployment. Each disruption seemed minor alone, but together they slowed the Empire's war machine. The Xarvok believed their territory was secure because no enemy had ever dared to strike deep inside their systems. That assumption was another mistake. Humans had studied the Empire's logistical structure during earlier skirmishes. They understood that wars are not won only by fleets in open space. They are won by supply lines, repair cycles, and resource flow. Human cyber divisions inserted complex interference programs into captured communication relays. These programs did not cause dramatic collapse. They introduced small inefficiencies, and inefficiency multiplied across an empire becomes weakness. As the Second Dominion fleet advanced toward human territory, they received inconsistent reports from their own rear systems. Some shipyards reported production delays. Fuel reserves were lower than projected. Replacement components failed quality checks. The High Commander dismissed these issues as temporary setbacks. His focus remained fixed on delivering a decisive blow to Earth. On the human side, leadership continued operating with calm precision. Military commanders held briefings that emphasized restraint and discipline. They knew the Second Dominion fleet was stronger in raw firepower than anything they had faced before. But they also understood that strength without adaptability becomes predictable. Human strategists designed a layered response. Instead of one large defensive line, they created multiple shifting engagement zones. Each zone was prepared with environmental advantages such as asteroid fields, artificial debris clouds, and hidden signal arrays. When the Dominion fleet entered the first engagement zone, they expected resistance at the perimeter of human space. Instead, they encountered scattered human vessels that appeared disorganized. The Xarvok commanders interpreted this as desperation. They ordered aggressive pursuit. As their ships accelerated, they entered a dense field of drifting metallic fragments. What seemed like harmless debris activated simultaneously. The fragments were small automated disruptors designed to emit fluctuating pulses that interfered with shield calibration. Xarvok shields began compensating rapidly, draining energy reserves faster than planned. The human ships did not remain stationary targets. They moved through the debris field with pre-programmed routes, unaffected by the disruption pulses. From multiple angles, adaptive cannons targeted shield nodes already strained by interference. Several Xarvok cruisers experienced cascading shield failures. Though not destroyed outright, they were forced to redirect power from weapons to defense. The overwhelming force of the Dominion fleet began losing its synchronization. As the battle intensified, human cyber units launched a coordinated digital assault. Previously embedded code within Xarvok networks activated at the same moment across multiple ships. Navigation displays flickered with incorrect spatial data. Targeting systems hesitated, unsure of which coordinates were accurate. In space combat, even a second of hesitation can shift momentum. Human vessels exploited these micro-delays with surgical strikes against command ships, disabling coordination rather than causing mass destruction. The High Commander realized too late that the humans were not attempting to defeat the Dominion fleet in a single confrontation. They were dividing it mentally and operationally. Each captain faced confusion within his own systems. Each officer questioned sensor reliability. Unity began to fracture under stress. The Empire had always relied on centralized command authority and predictable formation doctrine. Humans were attacking that doctrine directly. Meanwhile, human ground operations expanded quietly on the frontier. Special operations teams landed on small Xarvok outposts near contested regions. They sabotaged long-range scanners and extracted technological components for study. These missions were not about glory. They were about data acquisition. Every system captured meant another advantage in the next encounter. Back at the center of the engagement zone, the Dominion fleet attempted to regroup into tighter defensive formation. It was then that human long-range artillery platforms revealed themselves from hidden orbits behind gas giants. These platforms fired precision shots aimed at power distribution cores rather than hull structures. One by one, large Xarvok ships lost propulsion or weapons capability without dramatic explosions. The battlefield became filled with drifting vessels struggling to maintain function. For the first time in Xarvok history, retreat was not debated. It was ordered. The Dominion fleet withdrew under heavy strain, leaving behind disabled ships and scattered resources. Humans did not pursue recklessly. They tracked the retreating fleet carefully, recording engine patterns and shield recalibration methods during withdrawal. Even retreat provided information. As the Dominion fleet crossed back into Imperial territory, the High Council finally faced a truth they could no longer deny. Humanity was not surviving by chance. They were shaping the conflict deliberately. Every escalation by the Empire had strengthened human understanding. Every show of force had revealed exploitable structure. On Earth, leaders gathered once more in the secure command chamber. They reviewed battle recordings in silence. Casualties were acknowledged with respect, but there was no celebration. One senior commander summarized the situation clearly. The Xarvok Empire believed power meant domination. Humans understood that power meant control over adaptation. Far across the galaxy, news of the Dominion fleet's retreat spread through alien networks. Other civilizations watched carefully. The empire that had ruled by fear was no longer untouchable. And in the quiet of space, human fleets repositioned again, not for revenge, not for pride, but for the next calculated response. Because the Xarvok had not simply attacked a colony, they had attacked a species that improves under pressure. They had attacked the wrong species. The Xarvok Empire had always believed that strength came from hierarchy. Orders flowed from the High Council to commanders, from commanders to soldiers, and from soldiers to the battlefield. And discipline was enforced through fear and honor. It had worked for centuries. But as reports from the Dominion fleet retreat spread across Imperial systems, cracks began to form inside that structure. Officers whispered in private chambers. Analysts revised predictions with lower confidence. For the first time, the Empire's greatest enemy was not an external fleet. It was doubt. On Earth, the situation looked very different. Human cities were not in chaos. There were no riots demanding surrender. Instead, something else was happening. Nations that once argued over trade and politics were now sharing intelligence without hesitation. Military research divisions that once competed for funding were exchanging discoveries openly. Civilian engineers volunteered ideas that improved military logistics. Medical teams improved battlefield recovery systems, reducing long-term casualties. The attack on Haven 12 had done something the Xarvok did not expect. It had unified humanity in purpose. This unity was not loud or dramatic. It did not come with speeches about revenge. It came in quiet decisions. Governments agreed to suspend rivalries. Private corporations opened advanced research databases to military analysts. University laboratories redirected energy research toward shield adaptation studies. Humans were not just fighting a war. They were evolving together. The Xarvok High Council misunderstood this shift. They believed unity required forced obedience. They could not understand voluntary cooperation. Their spies reported increased communication between human factions, but they interpreted it as desperation. They believed humans were pooling resources because they were weak. They failed to see that pooling resources was the reason humans were becoming stronger. Meanwhile, human intelligence agencies expanded operations beyond direct military targets. They studied Xarvok cultural archives and social structures. They learned that Xarvok society was built on rigid status roles. Advancement was earned through conquest. Honor was tied to dominance. This system created powerful warriors, but it discouraged questioning leadership. Humans identified this as a structural weakness. Human psychological operations began transmitting carefully crafted messages into Xarvok border systems. The messages were subtle. They showed evidence of High Council strategic errors. They highlighted unnecessary fleet losses. And they suggested that lower-ranking officers were being sacrificed to preserve elite pride. These messages were not obvious propaganda. They were framed as intercepted tactical analysis leaks. Over time, they seeded mistrust within segments of the Empire's military. At the same time, humans continued their measured military pressure. Instead of large-scale battles, they targeted strategic infrastructure nodes deep inside Xarvok territory. Energy grid relays suffered coordinated shutdowns. Communications satellites experienced synchronized interference that forced manual recalibration. Supply chain algorithms were quietly manipulated, redirecting essential materials to incorrect systems. None of these actions destroyed entire planets, but they slowed the Empire's efficiency. The Xarvok responded with anger. The High Council authorized the construction of a massive planetary assault platform known as the Oblivion Spear. It was designed to eliminate human industrial centers in a single strike. The project required enormous resources, and its construction strained Imperial production lines. The Council believed one decisive display of overwhelming power would restore fear across the galaxy. Human intelligence detected the project early. Instead of launching a direct assault against the construction site, human leaders chose a more complex strategy. They studied the logistical chain supporting the Oblivion Spear. Mining operations on distant Xarvok worlds supplied rare minerals required for its energy core. Transport vessels moved these materials along predictable routes. The human strike teams began intercepting those transports far from the construction zone, capturing shipments and replacing them with carefully engineered substitutes that appeared identical but were structurally unstable under extreme energy loads. The sabotage was invisible at first. Construction continued smoothly. Xarvok engineers praised the speed of progress. The High Council felt confident again. They believed humans were retreating, preparing for inevitable defeat, but humans were not retreating. They were preparing something far more dangerous than a direct attack. They were preparing failure inside the Empire's most powerful weapon. While the Oblivion Spear neared completion, human fleets maintained steady pressure along multiple borders. They did not seek territory. They did not announce expansion. Or they simply reduced Xarvok operational confidence. Patrol captains second-guessed navigation routes. Supply officers double-checked manifests. Reaction times slowed because fear had entered the system. On Earth, a global summit of human leaders gathered not to celebrate victories, but to define long-term strategy. The consensus was clear. The goal was not annihilation of the Xarvok species. The goal was security through deterrence. Humans did not want endless war. They wanted the Empire to understand a simple truth. Aggression against humanity would cost more than it could ever gain. When the Oblivion Spear was finally activated in a demonstration test within Xarvok space, disaster struck. As the platform's core reached maximum energy capacity, microfractures formed within its substituted mineral structure. Energy containment failed. Instead of firing a focused beam toward its test target, the system destabilized and shut down violently. Though the platform did not explode completely, it was rendered inoperable. Repairs would take years. Resources would be drained further. The High Council reacted with shock and fury. They accused engineers of incompetence. Investigations began. But no clear explanation emerged. The flaw was too precise, too subtle. At that moment, the Empire finally began to understand something deeper about their enemy. Humanity's greatest weapon was not a single ship, a supercannon, or a secret fleet. It was coordination. It was the ability of billions of individuals across different cultures and languages to act toward a shared goal without losing flexibility. Humans could fight as one without becoming rigid, or they could cooperate without sacrificing creativity. That combination made them unpredictable. As news of the failed Oblivion Spear spread quietly through alien networks, other civilizations took notice. The once feared empire had invested heavily in a weapon that never fired. Meanwhile, humanity continued expanding its defensive capabilities calmly and efficiently. Back in the Xarvok capital, the High Commander stood before the Council once again. His voice no longer carried arrogance. It carried warning. He explained that every escalation had strengthened humanity's unity. Every show of force had exposed imperial weaknesses. The council chamber fell silent as the reality settled in. They had expected fear. Instead, they had created solidarity. And solidarity, when combined with adaptation, it was something the Empire had never learned how to defeat. The real human weapon was not something that could be destroyed in space. It was something that grew stronger the more it was tested. And now the Xarvok Empire was beginning to realize that they were no longer controlling the war. They were surviving it. The failure of the Oblivion Spear marked a turning point inside the Xarvok Empire. For the first time, the High Council openly used a word they had not spoken in centuries: survival. The Empire was no longer expanding, it was defending. Their fleets were still powerful, their armies still disciplined, but something had shifted. The certainty of dominance had been replaced by the fear of losing control. And fear inside a rigid system spreads faster than fire. In the deepest chamber beneath the imperial capital, the council authorized a final measure known only in classified archives. It was called the Extinction Protocol. This protocol had never been used. It was designed for one purpose: total elimination of a species deemed an irreversible threat. Unlike the Oblivion Spear, which required massive infrastructure, the Extinction Protocol relied on dispersed planetary strike devices hidden across frontier systems. These devices were smaller, mobile, and capable of destabilizing planetary ecosystems within days. The plan was simple and brutal. Deploy multiple devices across human core worlds, activate them simultaneously, and force humanity into collapse before they could respond. The High Commander hesitated when the order was issued. He understood that once activated, the Extinction Protocol would erase any possibility of negotiation. It would turn a strategic conflict into permanent hatred. But the Council believed there was no other option. Humanity was adapting too quickly. The only solution, in their minds, was to remove the variable completely. Human intelligence detected unusual energy signatures weeks before the Xarvok were ready to deploy. Small but consistent spikes in subspace transmission patterns suggested coordinated movement of advanced devices. Human analysts did not panic. They gathered data, mapped trajectories, and identified potential deployment vectors. The pattern was clear. The Empire was preparing something beyond conventional warfare. A closed session of Earth's unified command was called immediately. Military leaders, scientists, and strategic planners reviewed projections. The conclusion was direct. And the Xarvok were preparing extinction-level attacks. The response required absolute precision. Humanity could not afford a defensive reaction alone. They needed to neutralize the threat before activation. Human fleets split into rapid response divisions. Each division was assigned to intercept potential deployment vessels. Instead of broadcasting warnings, humans chose silence. They allowed the Xarvok ships carrying extinction devices to believe their movements were undetected. As the alien vessels approached targeted human systems, stealth human cruisers positioned themselves along predicted exit routes. The first interception occurred near a remote human agricultural colony. A Xarvok deployment ship exited hyperspace, unaware that it was already surrounded by signal-dampened human vessels. Within seconds, precision electromagnetic pulses disabled its propulsion systems without triggering the device on board. Human boarding teams entered swiftly, securing the strike device intact. The operation was executed with surgical efficiency. There were no unnecessary casualties. The device was transported to a secure research facility for analysis. Similar interceptions occurred across multiple systems. In some cases, the Xarvok ships attempted self-destruction when capture seemed inevitable. Human cyber units Anticipating this, preemptively locked critical command circuits, preventing activation. Each captured device revealed more information about the extinction protocol's structure and activation sequence. Meanwhile, one Xarvok deployment unit managed to slip through detection and reached orbit above a human industrial world. As it began preparing the strike device, human orbital defense arrays activated instantly. These defenses had been upgraded quietly over months of preparation. Adaptive frequency shields enveloped the planet, while long-range rail cannons targeted the alien vessel. The ship was disabled before the device could reach critical charge levels. The crisis lasted less than 6 minutes, but those minutes confirmed something vital. Humanity was not reacting in desperation. They were operating from anticipation. Back in the Xarvok capital, reports began flooding in. Deployment units were missing. Communication signals were being jammed. Activation confirmations failed to transmit. The High Council realized that their final weapon was being dismantled piece by piece before it could even fire. Shock turned to anger, but anger had no solution left to offer. Human scientists, analyzing the captured extinction devices, uncovered a disturbing truth. The devices were not limited to human DNA markers. With minor adjustments, they could be repurposed against Xarvok biology. This knowledge was presented to Earth's leadership. Some argued for immediate counter-deployment as deterrence. Others urged caution. Humanity had never sought annihilation. Their objective remained security, not revenge. After careful deliberation, a strategic decision was made. Humans would not use the extinction devices offensively. Instead, they would reveal to the Xarvok Empire that the devices had been captured and understood. A direct transmission was sent to the High Council. It included technical schematics of the intercepted weapons and proof of their neutralization. The message was calm and measured. It stated clearly that humanity had the capacity to reverse engineer the technology. It stated that escalation would result in equal capability. It did not threaten immediate destruction. It simply presented reality. The psychological impact was immediate. The Xarvok leadership had expected terror. Instead, they faced composure. Their ultimate weapon had been neutralized not by brute force, but by foresight. For the first time, the High Commander openly addressed the Council with a recommendation that would have once been considered dishonorable. He suggested opening communication channels for negotiated settlement. The Council resisted at first, clinging to pride, but military reports showed undeniable truth. Fleet readiness had dropped. Supply chains were strained. Internal dissent within lower ranks was growing. Officers questioned the wisdom of total annihilation attempts that repeatedly failed. The Empire's strength was eroding, not through catastrophic defeat, but through controlled dismantling. Human fleets did not advance aggressively during this period. They held defensive positions, monitored Xarvok movements, and reinforced border systems. The message was clear without being spoken. Humanity was capable of ending the war entirely, but it preferred resolution over extinction. As days passed without successful deployment of the extinction protocol, the High Council convened one final emergency session. The room that once echoed with confidence now carried the weight of consequence. They reviewed battle records from Haven 12 to the present moment. Now, every attempt to dominate humanity had strengthened it. Every escalation had revealed another weakness in Imperial rigidity. The realization settled slowly but firmly. Humanity was not simply resisting. Humanity had surpassed the Empire in strategic evolution. The extinction protocol had been the Xarvok's final gamble, and it had failed. Now the question before the Council was no longer how to destroy humanity. It was how to survive the species they had tried to erase. And across human space, fleets remained steady and silent, prepared for whatever decision the Empire would make next. The Xarvok High Council had once believed that power was measured by how many worlds bowed before them. Now they understood that power could also be measured by how many mistakes could no longer be undone. The extinction protocol had failed, Their fleets were damaged. Their supply lines were weakened. Their internal unity was cracking under pressure. And still, humanity had not launched a full invasion of their core worlds. That fact alone forced the Council to confront a difficult truth. Humans were not fighting for domination. They were fighting for balance. In the Imperial capital, silence filled the war chamber as projections displayed the current strategic situation. Human fleets held strong defensive positions along key sectors, but did not advance aggressively into Xarvok territory. Captured extinction devices remained inactive, yet their schematics had been transmitted openly. It was a message without shouting. Humanity was showing capability without using it recklessly. The High Commander finally spoke what many officers had already accepted. They are not seeking our extinction. They are forcing us to choose. Back on Earth, global leadership reviewed similar projections. Humanity had gained clear strategic advantage. The Empire's momentum was broken. But the question now was how to end the conflict without becoming the very force they had resisted. Military advisors presented options ranging from full offensive campaigns to long-term containment strategies. After careful discussion, a unified decision emerged. Humanity would not erase the Xarvok Empire. Humanity would redefine the relationship. A secure communication channel was opened directly to the Xarvok High Council. There were no dramatic ultimatums, no threats of annihilation. The message was calm, structured, and unmistakable. It outlined the damage caused by the initial attack on Haven 12. It listed every escalation initiated by the Empire. It detailed how each attempt had been countered, and then it presented terms: immediate cessation of hostilities, withdrawal of all Xarvok military forces from human-adjacent systems, recognition of human territorial sovereignty, mutual non-aggression pact enforced by monitored boundaries. The message ended with a simple statement: "We did not begin this conflict, but we are prepared to finish it if necessary." Inside the Xarvok Council chamber, the weight of those words settled heavily. Some members demanded continued resistance out of pride. Others, particularly military commanders who had witnessed human adaptability firsthand, understood that further escalation would lead to irreversible collapse. The Empire's greatest strength had always been centralized command. But now that structure felt fragile. Continued war risked internal fracture. The High Commander requested private deliberation with senior fleet leaders. They reviewed the data without political emotion. Fleet readiness was below optimal levels. Resource reserves had declined significantly. Production delays from earlier sabotage were still unresolved. Most importantly, morale across lower ranks had shifted. Soldiers who once believed in guaranteed victory now questioned the wisdom of leadership decisions. War fought without belief becomes unsustainable. After extended debate, the Council reached a decision that would have once been unthinkable. They agreed to negotiation. The response sent back to Earth was formal and restrained. The Xarvok Empire acknowledged mutual losses and expressed willingness to establish a ceasefire framework. That they requested secure diplomatic channels to formalize terms. It was not an apology, but it was surrender in everything except wording. Human fleets did not celebrate when the transmission arrived. They maintained defensive readiness until formal agreements were signed. Delegations met at a neutral star system monitored by independent civilizations who had watched the war carefully. The negotiations were precise and controlled. Boundaries were redrawn clearly. Military withdrawal schedules were defined. Surveillance systems were installed to ensure compliance from both sides. The most significant clause within the treaty was simple but powerful. The Xarvok Empire formally recognized humanity as a sovereign equal power within the galaxy. That recognition shifted more than borders. It shifted perception. The news of the agreement spread quickly through interstellar networks. Civilizations that had once feared Xarvok dominance now saw proof that the Empire could be challenged and contained. They also saw something else. Humanity, despite gaining advantage, had not chosen annihilation. They had chosen stability. On Haven 12, reconstruction had already begun months earlier. New defense systems orbited the colony. Families returned. Memorials honored those lost during the initial attack. But there was no constant call for revenge. Instead, there was determination. Humanity had survived not by being the strongest species physically, but by being the most adaptable strategically. Within the Xarvok Empire, reforms quietly began. Military doctrine was revised to emphasize flexibility over rigid hierarchy. Intelligence divisions were expanded. Internal communication systems were redesigned to reduce centralized vulnerability. The war with humanity had forced the Empire to evolve, even if they would never publicly admit it. Years later, historians across multiple civilizations would study the conflict carefully. They would note how the war began with arrogance and ended with balance. They would analyze the moment when a small colony called Haven 12 was attacked, and how that decision reshaped galactic power structures. But the most important lesson would not be about ships or weapons. It would be about response. When the Xarvok attacked, they expected fear. They expected surrender. They expected chaos. Instead, they triggered unity. They triggered adaptation. They triggered a species that learns under pressure faster than most empires can react. In the quiet chambers of Earth's leadership complex, one final report summarized the conflict. It did not glorify victory. It did not exaggerate heroism. It stated a simple conclusion. Humanity had demonstrated deterrence through controlled escalation and disciplined restraint. The galaxy updated its unspoken rule book after that war. There was now a clear understanding among advanced civilizations. Humanity was not aggressive without cause. Humanity did not seek conquest. But if threatened, humanity would respond with calculation, unity, and relentless adaptation. The Xarvok Empire survived. Humanity survived. But the balance of respect had changed forever. Because when you mess with humans, you do not face chaos. You face a species that turns pressure into progress. You face a species that does not break. And once they decide to respond, survival is no longer guaranteed for the one who started it.